Hi, Caroline.
Hi. Hello.
This is our first kind of like public chat.
Yes, it is.
So before we dive into the chat, and given that the topic is about climate leadership and education, which I know are two topics that are very close to your heart, any thoughts you want to share about the film that you just watched? And I ask that because I know you especially have a love for gardening.
That's
so
true.
Nature is close to your heart. So any thoughts?
It really is. And I think it really had a very strong emotional appeal. And I think oftentimes our emotions are very powerful to drive us to think differently, to act differently. And I think, Ian, you captured this very well. And so, when you get those goosebumps, then I think that's exactly what we need sometimes, to have that wake up moment and to think, okay, what can we do differently? And how can we, use this feeling to get us to move, essentially. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So with that, can you share with us a little bit about yourself? When was the moment where you first came to Asia that then sparked, all the many wonderful things that you did? So share with us, introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
Sure. I see a lot of familiar faces already, but my name is Caroline. I have been in Asia for coming to 16 years now. Initially, it was just a job that brought me here for a 2-year contract, and I found it hard to leave, and I'm actually Singaporean now. So I think my journey into what I'm doing now at susGain started with being abroad for a couple of years and coming back to Singapore and seeing how the country has been changing. So noticeably, for example, in the 3 years that I've been away, I saw that suddenly food courts that I used to love to eat changed from having reusables, switching to single-use items, or seeing a lot more like waste and actually also, a more waste issue in urban areas and so on. And it made me think that how come that we are not moving in the right direction. And that maybe personally triggered me to embark on this journey with my family to see how can we adopt more sustainable lifestyle habits, what can we do about it. And actually I found we have the good intentions, we want to do something, but it's actually really hard to follow through. And as I've been talking with friends, colleagues at work, we all felt the same thing. We kind of know, yes, this is what we should be doing, but are we doing it? No. And we all felt a bit guilty about it. We felt like a bit stuck. And I was like, actually, what we are experiencing is a change management problem. And then I looked a little bit more into what would need to change and where does it come from? And then we found that a lot of the challenges that we face are coming from the maybe lack of information of what we can do, and then also the lack of motivation, how can we do it, and maybe also the lack of incentive, because we have so many priorities in our life and there's always something else that's more important. And so that kind of triggered us eventually to see, is there anything that we can do to help? And I always felt there was technology is quite powerful. There's a lot of self-help apps out there to be more fit, to adopt a certain diet, to learn a new language. And I was just thinking, can we build something similar for sustainability as well, to just have something that helps us to get started on our own journey? And that was about almost 5 years ago.
That's amazing. So for those of us who are new to you and meeting you for the first time, could you share with us a little bit about what susGain is and what susGain does as it goes on to inform, motivate, and incentivize this mindset shift?
Sure. So basically, we have technology started off with a mobile application that we use to create engagement for sustainability. So initially we started more with I would say B2C approach, like trying to change individual mindsets, but we found that actually we can drive the needle faster and move things faster if we are working with communities. So now we are predominantly working with corporates and also with educational institutions to help these communities drive transformation within their organization, and trying to identify how can the sustainability strategy or goals that they have be broken down into very tangible activities that everyone in the organization can be part of, and basically mobilize more people in the organization to do this transformation together in a very like gamified, fun way by completing activities, doing challenges together, climbing the leaderboard, redeeming some prizes, and so on. And so that's how we basically see that we can reach more people, and they are more intrinsically motivated, and you know, like they feel more emotionally touched to actually continue on this journey in time to come. And hopefully that helps us change, you know, like things from inside out a little bit faster.
Awesome. And so you mentioned what susGain does is to help communities drive transformational change, right? And so in the communities that you work with, I believe there will be the public community and then the private community. So could we just touch on the first part, public, specifically schools? Because I know that is an area that you're very passionate about. Share with us a little bit more about what you and the team have been doing there.
Actually, our work with schools started when I, in 2022, came across the OCBC Climate Index, which is a public perception study done in Singapore looking at sustainability awareness, adoption, and advocacy levels. And interestingly, the study showed that all generations have that gap, meaning to say our awareness is higher than our adoption. But in the youngest generation, this gap was the widest. And that really shocked me, because I was always under the belief, since we are educating our youth since kindergarten, you know, like about reduce, reuse, recycle and all of it, they should be the one also being most ready to act and most ready to advocate. But apparently, according to the data, that was not a given. And so we kind of try to see how can we really focus more on youth engagement and going into schools, starting from as young as primary school all the way to university students, and work with them and learn from them what are the challenges that they are facing. And actually, oftentimes, when also I have discussions, I hear that they are very well aware that they could do more and that they are not doing it. And oftentimes what they share with us is like, it's because it's just not very convenient. It's just, it just doesn't maybe fit the lifestyle. And it's not attractive enough, right, in terms of all of the other things that we could possibly do. And so I always also challenge them back and try to, you know, like see how can we change user experiences then, or how can we work together to break down these barriers that are there. And so from our side, we are looking at using gamification and behavioral nudges and those kind of things. And I think there's an element to it. But I think also sometimes it's looking at the whole setup maybe in a community, and how can we design maybe more smarter to make things easier.
Yeah, I would imagine as you go about designing all these differentiated user experiences, right? As you go about educating the public sector, I would imagine that it would be quite different if you were to go about educating companies in the private sector. Could you share with us a little bit, like in terms of educating for transforming behaviors, for example, and mindsets? Do you see that there is a similarity or difference between, say, the educating the public sector, meaning the schools, the students, versus employees in companies?
Both similarities and differences. I think maybe the topics that we are touching on are slightly different, but I think the challenges are seen in organizations as well.
Could you pick one and elaborate for us a little bit, if possible?
Sure. I think most of the time in organizations, the challenges are on the communication front. So over the past couple of years, all of them have come up with their decarbonization or net zero targets and whatnot. But then you have 4,000 people in the region who are not aware, right? And then the internal comms team would have sent out a couple of EDMs informing everyone, and then they tell us, oh, but the email opening rate is just 5%. So then how are we reaching all of these people? And I think we cannot expect just by, I think sometimes corporates think like we just throw out more information, and the more information we throw at you, the more you're going to change, right? But that's not how it works. And so we try to see, are there other ways that we can actually reach people? And we always feel the emotional appeal works better. And so to give you an example for that particular instance where they couldn't reach people through normal communication, we created this kind of gamified app challenge where there was different activities for employees to do. And as part of it, every morning there was a push notification sent to them with a little pop quiz, which they could answer and they could win prizes. And so then by having this campaign going on for, 2 months or so, we actually got 30% of the employees really actively engaging with that content. And we could also then measure exactly which are the content pieces that were better understood and which not, and then helping the internal comms team to, again, better sharpen the messages so that more people could be reached, for example.
Thank you for sharing that example. And it's very interesting that you mentioned that the challenge that the companies face is communication, because we started today with the first panel on communication and storytelling, right? Like, why does it matter, communication and climate? So I thought that's very interesting. Shifting the lens a little bit, just now you mentioned incentivizing. So we're all humans, like Leon said just now, right? We're all capitalistic to a medium or a large extent. So incentives. Could you share with us a little bit about your views around incentives to drive behavior change, specific to the topic of maybe end users adopting sustainable options? What's your view? What have you observed? And yeah, maybe share with us a use case of sorts.
I think incentives are important to create a certain sense of urgency, perhaps, because in the ideal world, we would think, we don't need incentives because the cause is important enough that we will do it. But then at the same time, we are always, there's so many important things in our life, right? And sometimes, like knowing, for example, bringing your reusable lunchbox, right? And if everybody could easily do it, but we just don't think of it. But then if I tell you, okay, you do this now for the next couple of days, and then on Friday I give you a reward for it, or you get, a free lunch, then you will suddenly try to remember it because you have something in your mind, like a hook that, because you have to remember doing it when you leave the house. And that hook will help you remind, okay, bring your reusables. And then you get that reward. And afterwards, since you already maybe brought your reusable lunch container for 5 times, even if I take away the reward, you're much more likely to continue this behavior because you have already practiced it over a period of time. And so sometimes I feel incentives are a great way to get our engine started to a certain extent to have a starting point. And then sometimes another example that I also tend to give is that when we are running campaigns with corporates or schools, we always try to see, is there any very big prize or reward that we could get, like be it a dining voucher or for sometimes staycation or something big. And then people are like, but how does this relate to sustainability, or why do we need to kind of trick people into doing the right things? But actually the intention is very different. When you are running a sustainability campaign in an organization, you will automatically attract those people who already believe in the cause. They will automatically say, oh, this is a good idea, let me join. But there's a whole bunch of other people who unfortunately are not interested and they don't care. And actually the best conversion is getting them into the topic as well. And sometimes they might just see a post and say, oh, win a, let's say, staycation in Sentosa, or have a family outing or whatnot. And that's actually what's gonna make them stop and gonna think, oh, what do I need to do about it? And then along the way, they get to know, okay, this is a campaign about sustainability and what kind of activities do we have to do in order to get the prize. And we see that this is just like another way to maybe communicate the message and get more eyes and more attention, Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, personally, I'm just very curious. What has been the most popular incentive that drove the highest conversions so far?
I really think staycations are very popular.
Okay, there are plenty hotels in Singapore for you to find staycations.
And there's also, and also whenever we are recommending prices, we are looking at, there's always the more sustainable options available as well, and trying to see also how can we use this again for storytelling, that you learn about what are the sustainability efforts of that particular property, or how can you have the most, sustainable stay and stuff like that as well. Or the same for dining, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and so like with incentives to motivate behavior change, right? I wonder whether if and when you communicate about the impact that is delivered, does that actually motivate the end user to shift any of their behaviors or take action?
I think it's important, but sometimes, so oftentimes people actually, when you download the susGain app, you will see that we don't really put actually carbon out there, your carbon emissions. And initially people were like, oh, but we are expecting from a sustainability app to show what's our carbon footprint. And we did a lot of user research, and we found that actually the issue is that it doesn't resonate a lot with people. It's just a number, and it's very intangible. And so they see the number, but they forget the number as well. And so we decided we wanted to focus more on actions or activities, and showing you in your impact dashboard on the app how many times have you volunteered or how many times have you brought a reusable, rather than showing you what is maybe the associated carbon savings, if there's any, right? And the same goes as well with the impact that we can create. So the points you earn on the app, for example, can be converted to support causes. And we wanted to make it very tangible. So for example, you can use your points to plant a tree, to remove trash from Singapore waterways, to donate a meal to a school child in India. So these kind of very tangible rewards that put a picture in your mind, so that you feel, okay, my actions really make a difference, and you can kind of quantify that in your head as well. And so these were just like considerations to make it a bit more tangible, and so a bit more sticky that way.
Speaking of tangible, as an end consumer, we shop and buy a lot of things. On this topic of shopping comes the next sibling word, which is trending these days, or maybe no longer trending, of pre-loved. And I know you may have maybe some controversial thoughts around that. Please share with us.
No, I think yesterday we had this very nice panel discussion with Rebello and Decathlon about circular economy, and also about some of the misconceptions that consumers have. And one of the key, when it comes to fashion, actually, one of the key, or maybe instead of me saying it, maybe I ask you, first of all, who is wearing something secondhand right now? Oh, awesome, I see a few hands going up. And then maybe I ask you, if you are not, what would be your main concerns not to wear something secondhand? Yes? Cleanliness, okay. Anybody shares Richard's concern? Is that something that comes to your mind when you think of secondhand clothes? Or it's just Richard's paranoia? So cleanliness, actually, yes?
If it's secondhand and it's in the washing machine, there might be plastics that go down into the water.
What do you mean, like when you...
Plastics in the clothes, that microplastics.
Okay. And how is it different from the one that you're wearing right now? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I mean, yeah, could be. Sometimes it's also accessibility. So for example, if you for male clothing, there's sometimes not so many options actually available, sadly, right? But I have been asking this question a lot of time, and very often they're not the main concern is about hygiene. Also, when we work with schools, then the parents will say like, oh, we are happy to have our kids donating clothes, but we don't want them to take any back. That's not hygienic, right? And sometimes I challenge this. And so the analogy I tend to use is actually a hotel stay visit. because the bed sheets, are they new? The towels, are they new? No, right? They're all pre-loved, right? All around us, we are sitting on pre-loved chairs, we are drinking out of pre-loved cups, and you know, everything is used as well. And it's just being washed, it's just being taken care of. And I think that it's just like that in our mind more than an actual problem that we have. And it's really about maybe trying to work on our biases as well and challenge those a little bit, yeah.
So share with us a little, I'm glad you brought up the word bias, because not that I'm plugging for Carolin, but I really was very inspired when I watched her recent TEDx talk about cognitive bias. So share with us a little bit, maybe the summary of the gist of it, right? Two takeaways you would share with us in terms of how we should tackle our own cognitive bias around this notion of, say, like adopting pre-loved, right? Because like you mentioned, probably everyone in this room loves travel. So for as long as we travel, we will stay in a house, an Airbnb or a hotel. And so therefore, 80% of the things that we will interact with, like per Carolin's analogy, is all pre-loved, but that it's clean. It has been clean, right? So share with us, knowing that we are all experiencing that, what might be two insights or takeaways that you would share with us to encourage us to tackle our own cognitive bias around this pre-loved consumer behavior thing?
I think maybe to take one step back, the first thing I think that we have to be aware of is that actually we are not rational decision makers, we are not rational thinkers. So I resonate a lot with, for example, people like Amos Tversky, Kahneman, who tell us that our brain consists of two very different systems. So we have the fast thinking brain and the slow thinking brain. And the slow thinking brain is the deliberate ones that helps us to take conscious decisions. But actually our fast thinking brain is the one that makes 95% of our decisions. So oftentimes, actually, our fast-thinking brain is the one that comes in first before we rationalize it, or we rationalize it afterwards. And because of that, we are almost like, working on autopilot. And what our fast-thinking brain really loves is shortcuts, like the easy way out. So that's why we form habits. That's why when we go to work, we always tend to go the same way again, even though there would be 5 different ways we could walk. That's why we remember automatically when we leave the house to bring our phone and our keys, right? It's just actually habits that we have trained that make us not to need to think about it, because our slow thinking brain takes a lot of energy and is sometimes very uncomfortable to use that part of our brain. And so oftentimes in marketing, marketers have become really good in attracting our fast thinking brain and getting us to buy now, right? Like clicking that button and making us to, have this very impulsive purchasing decisions. And sometimes I think that's when we just have to pause ourselves and just take a step back and say, do I really need this item now, right? And if I need this item, does it need to be new? Is there anybody I could borrow it from? Could I maybe rent it? How often am I going to use it, right? And then only taking a more deliberate purchasing decision. So I think sometimes we need to really slow ourselves down and become just a little bit more mindful, and then it will help us actually also to make more sustainable lifestyle choices.
That's amazing. Again, this concept of slowness. Just now we were talking about slow travel. So we all need to slow... Sorry?
Slow shopping, yes. And it's very hard because actually we are, there's like an ecosystem created around us that thinks, that makes us do shopping as we are, sitting in the bus and multitasking and doing many other things, right? And in those kind of situations, we are much more likely to do wrong purchasing decisions because it's not very deliberate, right? Yeah.
I would call it intentional shopping. That would be
Yeah.
Intentional shopping, yes. That makes sense. And so on that note, taking actions, right? Coming back to the topic today, which is about education. Earlier on, you shared about information acquisition. Advocacy and action taking is always difficult. On your journey so far in doing all the education that you have been doing with your partners, has there been any memorable story or experience where you and the team or you and the partners really helped transformed and shifted mindsets about a particular thing that you could share with us?
Maybe I take again since we have been talking about fashion, the example of a project that we did in a primary school where we got the kids to, first of all, donate their, and for kids, they grow out of their clothes very, very fast, donate their clothes. And we worked with a local partner who actually curated then all of these kids' clothes, sanitized them, and we put them back onto racks into the primary schools. And then we let whichever kid has donated something before could just pick up any of the items and bring it home. And the whole intention behind was really to have the kids having this conversation with their parents as they are coming home, because the kids, they really have zero bias towards secondhand clothes. They are happy. They were so happy to look through the different options that there were. They were mostly, especially the boys, concerned about, which maybe superhero characters on that T-shirt. They were super, super happy that for the first time, and probably for some kids in their life, they could make a decision on their own what item they could choose, and it was not mommy or daddy choosing. And then they proudly brought these items home. And I think what is interesting is then that conversation that these kids have with their parents, and the kids then educating the parents about, secondhand clothes being okay, instead of the parents thinking for their kids that, oh, this is not what we could do. And so I think sometimes it's really about finding occasions where you can make people also stop and think. And I think, that's what I love, for example, working with schools, when we actually can inspire kids from young to just change a little bit their perception about certain things.
Yeah, kids educating the parents. So that's also a little bit like reverse mentoring, right? Like the younger generation mentoring the older generations, for example, which then leads me to the point around climate leadership. So Carolin, you have been building teams, working on projects that helps shift mindsets for a couple years now. Share with us your view around climate leadership, what is needed, and finally, if there was one ask that you can put out to the audience, what might that ask be?
Oh, that's a big question. I don't know if I can. Climate leadership. I think for people of us who are in a situation where they can, where they are leading other people and leading other teams, it's maybe about considering like how do we facilitate that discourse or interaction with whatever transformation or change that we want people to do. And how can we make the more sustainable options more attractive and appealing instead of towards the other ones? And so, for example, one thing that resonated with me a lot is in the book Nudge. Maybe some of you have read it, from Sunstein and Taylor. They talk about a concept which is called the libertarian paternalism. And so that actually talks about the idea that you should make the more sustainable options and choices more readily available and more accessible, and making it basically in a way nudging people in that way, choosing that better option. So for example, in the food court, let's say the more healthier option also happens to be the one that's listed on top, also has an extra star there, and it's also more affordable. Then obviously more people will be more inclined to choose that healthier option. And I think oftentimes in our organizations and as leaders, we also can, with the awareness that we have, we can in a positive way guide maybe our teams or the people that we want to influence towards the more the better options through the way we are designing certain processes or maybe also the things that we are working on.
Awesome. And if there was one ask you would want all of us to consider or take action on, is there any ask you want to put out there into the universe? #manifest.
I think there's all of you are already professionals in this field, and you're all, spending your, Tuesday morning to listen to me here. I think it's actually maybe more encouragement. Keep on doing all of the good stuff that you're doing. And I think for me, everybody has it's like a big puzzle to really move the needle, and everybody has a role to play, right? And just don't give up on believing in yourself that you can actually make a difference, and every day try to change whatever you can change within your personal, area or domain of expertise. And I think together, then that's how things are going to be transformed, right? But sometimes it seems a bit daunting, and it's not easy. So I just hope that you, from attending summits like this, just go back with a little bit more energy and hopefulness that it's worth your time and your effort to keep pushing and to keep fighting. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Keep pushing, being persistent is like what Mei Lin said, to be a pest. Right? Continue to be a pest and being persistent. Thank you so much, Caroline. You've taught us a lot today. You reminded us about educating ourselves to get information. How can we go about motivating other people? And then how can we really think about the kind of positive impact that we can deliver as we lead as a human and as a person. Are there any questions from the floor? No? Yes.
Hi, Carolin. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting, and I personally have used susGain before, so it's a really cool app. I just have one question on echo chambers. So have you ever conducted some kind of survey or looked into the users that are that are using susGain, right? In the sense that are they just people who are already being quite sustainable in their lives, and this is just an added benefit to something that they're already doing, or are there people who are really new to the sustainability space, and this is actually creating some kind of additionality? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very, very good question, and I think this is actually also it is part of our evolution, where I mentioned initially we started more with a B2C approach and trying to see how can we attract people, to adopt sustainable lifestyle habits, and potentially attracting those people who already see the need and who already are on their journey. And then we decided, no, we need to shift, and we need to actually try to reach more people who have not yet started on their journey. And that's where we decided a B2B approach, or working with communities, is much more powerful. And so as I mentioned earlier, sometimes when we work with organizations, we are looking for those people who really don't care yet about that topic, and trying to even see what could be incentives or nudges that make them make them be interested, so that we can actually also attract them for the cause. And then there's, I think, a lot of people who are in this area, we haven't done a study, but which are in the kind of borderline. They understand, they subscribe to the idea, but they just haven't come around doing something. And so this is typically an audience that resonates well with what we are doing with gamification, that we can convert. Because when you look at changing habits, it's really a matter of repetition, right? Doing the conscious thing long enough that our fast brain takes over and it becomes effortless. And in the process of using our slow brain, it's very hard and it's annoying. And because of that, we need maybe nudges, incentives, team play, coming together with our colleagues, having maybe a colleague coming and encouraging me, so that it gets a little bit less frictionless. And then at one point, it becomes already a habit, that particular activity, and then you can actually go on your own. And so in an ideal case, if somebody already figured out how to bring their reusables, or figured out how to choose more green commute options, or learned about biodiversity, whatever that is, they don't need the app anymore, right? Then they are already self-sufficient. So my goal is not so much converting people to come and use the app. That's just like an aid. But if you're already able to do it without the app, by all means, then I have reached my goal, right? Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Awesome, thank you. Let's give a round of applause for Caroline. Thank you for sharing.